Welcome all and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Michael Downey and we will jump in shortly to the content of today's webinar, which is a Sustainable Winegrowing Australia update. But before we do, a couple of very quick reminders for anyone new to webinars. To provide a comment or to ask a question, please open the Q&A section of the webinar, type in your question and click to send it through. Also, just a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available to view later this afternoon from the AWRI's YouTube channel. For those of you that have just joined, welcome. Today's important session provides an overview of the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia program and will cover membership requirements, certification and use of the new trust mark. It's my pleasure to introduce the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia Program Manager and Manager for Sustainability and Viticulture at the AWRI, Dr. Mardi Longbottom. Mardi's career in the wine industry dates back to the 90s when helping to establish her family's vineyards in Padthaway. She holds undergraduate and postgraduate qualifications in viticulture from the University of Adelaide and has extensive technical and vineyard management expertise. For the previous 12 years, Mardi's work has focused on research and extension of wine industry climate and sustainability projects, including climate risk analysis, management of corporate water assets, and benchmarking greenhouse gas emissions from vineyards. So Mardi, thank you for joining us today. And if you're ready to make a start, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in this morning. From what I can see, from all over Australia, and I know we also have people joining us from overseas. So I see we have some from the USA, Sweden and New Zealand. So welcome to you as well. This morning, I'm bringing you an update on Sustainable Winegrowing Australia, the Australian wine industry sustainability program. So the Australian wine industry has a long commitment and long history in sustainable management, and since as early as the 1990s has invested an abundance of resources and human capital that's contributed to what we know is the world-class program that we have today in Sustainable Winegrowing Australia. In the past 12 months, there's been a lot going on and there's lots of new information, and I'm very pleased to be here sharing it with you today. In my role, I spend a lot of time talking to the members of the program, and in the past year, they've been really generous in sharing their thoughts on the benefits of Sustainable Winegrowing Australia. Now, Renewal Vineyard and Winery have been certified members of the program since 2011, and General Manager and winemaker Shannon Sutherland says Sustainable Winegrowing Australia gives us independently assessed criteria against which we can benchmark ourselves and tell our story to the world. I recently worked with Shannon to develop a case study on the work being done at Renewal to reduce their energy and water use. The work Shannon's been doing has saved fuel, electricity, water and money, and I encourage you to have a read of that case study. I'll direct you to where you find that later on in my presentation. Kingston Estate Wines have certified vineyard and winery memberships across several regions, and they've been members of the program since 2009. In talking to Shelley Ray Brennan, who's the grape supply manager at Kingston, she says that for them, certification formally acknowledges their commitment to the program and drives change within their business. And across in Margaret River in Western Australia, Richard Bateman, the vineyard manager at Bantry Bay Vineyard, says that he values Sustainable Winegrowing Australia because the program's recognised industry-wide by their customers. He uses the metrics to find areas to improve and says if you change a variable, you'll change your outcome. So in addition to acknowledging the importance of sustainability on the ground, we've also observed this growing interest and expectation from consumers that wine should carry sustainability credentials. And supporting consumers in their choices, customers or retailers are also responding. Now, for more than 10 years, we've been observing these global retailers and the trends amongst them. And for those of you who've seen me present this slide before, you'll see that it has actually evolved somewhat. The demand for producers to demonstrate sustainability credentials is certainly evolving. Customers recognise the underlying demand for sustainable products. There's an expectation that products need to meet basic sustainability standards, and there's recognition amongst the customers that sustainability builds and protects their own brand. And I think something that many wine companies here in Australia also recognise is that it's really important to use sustainability in building that integrity of their brands. Something else I want to highlight here with these yellow circles is that this is a relatively recent shift. Customers are aligning their internal goals with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So I've got their UN SDGs. Now, if you're not familiar with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, they're described by them as the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. The 17 goals that you can see here address the global challenges that we all face. So these include poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace and justice. So last year, my team here at the AWRI began a mapping exercise of Sustainable Winegrowing Australia against the Sustainable Development Goals, and we're continuing to monitor our progress here and also use these goals to identify areas for continuous improvement of the program. Let's have a look at the program membership. Sustainable Winegrowing Australia currently has a database of over 1,000 members, approximately half of whom are active. The members are located across 41 of our wine regions in Australia. These are indicated by those little yellow markers there. And they cover approximately a quarter of Australia's wine grape vineyard area and approximately 20% of the national crush. The way membership works is that all the members enter the program, and it's a completely online program, and they enter the program with a relatively small commitment. Being a member means that you've taken the first step towards demonstrating a commitment to sustainability. All members complete the annual business metrics and a self-assessment workbook. One of the biggest benefits that the members tell us of being a member, even at the membership level, is that they have access to the annual online benchmarking reports. Now, these benchmarking reports enable them to identify inefficiencies, where they can make changes in their production, and we've seen and heard them tell us how much they can improve their efficiency, improve productivity, and reduce their cost of production. Now, the data captured by the system each year in those annual metrics, it's there, and growers and winemakers find that it's pretty helpful to track changes over time, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. But it also helps them to manage their risks and identify risks as they occur. When we surveyed the members a couple of years ago, they told us, or a lot of them, I think it was about 50% of them told us, that being part of the program also promotes innovative thought within their organisations and also action on the ground. In some cases, not just for individuals, but also for regions, they've found that being part of the program has also improved their community relations. 50% of the members also said that it enhanced their reputation, and I guess that relates back to my earlier point about improved community relations, but they say that it also promotes leadership and especially demonstrates and enables them to, I guess, encourage others to adopt sustainable practices. So some members stay at this level indefinitely, but others will take a bigger leap and they'll be motivated to take on a bigger commitment to become certified. So certified members do the same annual data reporting, and they also complete the self-assessment workbook, but they also go a further step and they invite an independent auditor to scrutinise their processes once every 3 years. Being certified enhances the credibility of the claims that they can make around sustainability, and it demonstrates a deeper commitment to sustainability. And what they can do now is the certified members also have access to use that trust mark, which gives their customers, consumers, a greater assurance of how their product is produced. Sustainable members have enhanced international marketing opportunities through Wine Australia's marketing events programs, and they also have an opportunity to integrate their sustainability stories into Wine Australia's education and content for customers and consumers. As I mentioned just now, the program itself has two major sections: the quantitative data or business metrics, and also the qualitative data collected from the self-assessment workbook. So the elements that you can see here on the screen cover the essential parts of the program. So starting from, we collect information about the production metrics of the business, so yield and vineyard area, but also the crush in a winery, the water use, waste production. We collect economic data. This is a voluntary part of the program. And we also collect information about energy use and the use of renewable energies, impacts on the community and behaviour in the community, biodiversity data, and also both quantitative and qualitative. We look at impacts on air quality, chemical use, pest and disease and biosecurity management, environmental and sustainability action planning, different ways of soil management, and also fertiliser application. So for more detail about these elements of the program, you can go to the program guide online, and again I'll show you a little bit later where to find that. But the members of the program will know that once you're inside the program, there's a lot of other resources in there. As I mentioned, all of the data that's collected each year is stored. The data is stored confidentially and securely, and no other member has access to see another member's data. Members themselves, though, have full access to their historical records, making it a pretty useful tool for tracking changes in performance over time. So what you can see here is a screenshot of just some of the historical data available to all of their members. All of the pieces of data that a member puts into the program are visible like this as well. So for those of you who may not have seen what the workbook looks like, there are 10 chapters in the vineyard workbook, and the same as in the winery workbook. And for the vineyards, there's just over 100 questions. So each question is set out like this example you can see there, and there's a number of options. So the idea of this is that you work your way from the top down to the bottom question, and you'll see as you go down the list, it's actually cumulative. So each tick box down the list includes additional information and additional actions towards achieving best practice. So the way the levels work is that at a level 1, it is really that the member says that, yes, I've got some knowledge in this area. But if they go down to number 2, they can say, well, okay, not only do I have some knowledge in this, but I've also taken some action. Level 3 is what we generally consider best practice in that area. And then if they go beyond that, it's really a stretch goal and, above and beyond what would generally be considered best practice. The other thing to note here, and I think you can see where my cursor is, on these little blue buttons there, if you click them in the live platform, there's a lot of additional resources in there and external links to fact sheets and websites where you can get a lot more information to help you and improve your practices in the area. Talking to Anton Groffen from Wirrawirra in McLaren Vale, he says that the workbook helps him in his business help plan the year ahead. But as I mentioned before, by far the most valuable part of the program, as we hear from most members, is not just going through those processes of looking at the self-assessments and identifying the areas where they can improve, but really is that ability to take a virtual look over the fence at the neighbours. So every member has access to one of these fully customisable benchmarking reports for all of the bits of information that goes into the program. And these benchmarking reports, you can see that they're actually an indicator of how you're performing relative to all of the other members. And these are customisable by region or state or nationally. The way we encourage people to use these is to really, it's really good to see how you're performing compared to others. And so for this one here, the example is diesel use in litres per hectare. And the dial's showing that it's up at near the red section of the dial, which means that this individual is performing in the upper 25% of all of the members. So their fuel usage is higher than 75% of the members in that category. It's really important to remember, though, that while you're comparing yourself to others, it's really useful to go back and have a look from year to year how that performance shifts. So the example we often give is if you've got a dial like this with diesel and say, well, okay, my performance is high relative to most of the other members. What is it that I'm doing in my vineyard or my operation that could be affecting my diesel use? So then I'd encourage them to go and have a look at some of the other dials. So for yield, this person was ranked 50% compared to the other members, which means they're sitting in the mid-range. So it's probably not because they're driving bigger yields in the vineyard. When we looked at water, they also were around about the mid-mark for water use. So it was not because they were necessarily pumping more water than everybody else. So the next step would say, okay, well, where else are you using diesel in your operations? It's probably your tractors. So the idea would be to have a look at how many tractor hours you're using. Is this because you're spraying more than everybody else, or you're doing something different in your soil management compared to everybody else? And if you can identify what the area is where you're doing something different to everyone else, then ideally you can change your practice, reduce the diesel use, And ultimately, there's a big cost savings associated with that. At the regional level, we've been working with several regions to develop reports to effectively communicate the performance at that regional level. So this is just an example here from one of the regions we've been working with. And these are the areas of the workbook that they completed last year. And this is an aggregation of all the members in that region. So what you can see here is that in the chemical management area, they're performing really well. And I think that's probably no great surprise. What we generally find with all of the members is chemical management is probably the best performing area. But that pest and disease management is where there's probably some room for improvement. Now, if I drilled into that a bit more closely, I could tell you that within that pest and disease management, there's a lot of questions in that chapter, including biosecurity. And it was actually some of the biosecurity areas that this region in particular had some areas where they could improve their performance. I'm really just showing you this as an example of what we can do in regions where they do have a fair uptake of members, and we can put these reports together for them as a region to help them to identify where their priority areas are for action. We've also combined the data and the workbook results for those regions and really so that we can, again, help them to focus on those priority areas. The example I've got here is just around vineyard irrigation. So this was last year's data. And for that region, we knew that everybody in the region was using drip irrigation. But what we identified through the self-assessment workbook was that about a third of the members were not monitoring their soil moisture in any way. So for that region to see that information was probably a little bit surprising for them. But it was an area that they could say, well, if they're not monitoring soil moisture, then maybe as a region, that's something that we can get behind and support them to improve that practice. This one here is another example from some of the work we've done for one of the regions where we were able to say for vineyard and winery energy use, nationally around 10% of the members were using renewable energy, but for that region, they were actually performing better than the national average with 17% of their members using renewable energy. Now, in the energy section, though, we also looked at how members were actively managing their energy consumption. And what you can see there is that 66% of the members were doing that, but which I guess opens it up to say, well, there were at least 30% who were not actively managing their energy consumption. So again, it's an opportunity for improvement, but most importantly for this one, energy consumption is a big draw of cash from a business. And if you can refocus and have members managing that energy consumption, there's an opportunity for saving money. So one of the most exciting updates from the program is the recent launch of the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia Trust Mark. The Trust Mark gives the certified members of the program the ability to demonstrate their commitment to sustainable grape and wine production. So last year we had strong feedback from the members that a Trust Mark was an essential element of the program. So together, the Australian Wine Research Institute and Australian Grape and Wine jointly invested in developing and protecting this mark. The Trust Mark has taken a full year to develop, and we're particularly grateful for the feedback from a number of key groups, including the team at Wine Australia, the program members, and some of the key marketing personnel from across the wine industry in the region. So we really appreciate the feedback that you've given us, and I hope you're also pleased with the outcome. The Trust Mark is now available for use by the certified members, and we encourage all of our certified members to use it. So I'm just going to show you some of the new things that are available on the website. Just relating to the Trust Mark, for those certified members who would like to use the Trust Mark, there's a link there on our website that takes you to the Trust Mark rules and style guide. It's really important if you're wanting to use it just to make sure that you've had a good read of that and you understand all the requirements. This is what I guess the first part of the document looks like. There's a one-pager describing the rules of use. On the second page, there's a style guide that looks like this. So this is really just to give you some guidance on when you are using the Trust Mark, how to use it correctly. And then on the last page, there's a page of frequently asked questions. So a lot of them are fairly straightforward, but if you've got a tricky situation, a use of the Trust Mark that we hadn't considered before, there might be some fleshing out of the questions hopefully you'll find the answer here. If you don't find the answer though, feel free to get in touch with us. I guess one of the important things, a lot of people have asked about the trust mark and use on wine labels. The most important rule about that is that if you're wanting to use the trust mark on wine labels, you must ensure that the wine contains fruit from certified vineyards. So at least 85% of that fruit must have come from a certified vineyard, and the wine itself must be made in a certified winery. I've just put this example here from Margans. Margans have been in touch with us just recently and sent us all of their artwork and their proofs to show us how they're using the new trust mark on their wine labels. So I guess as part of the approval process, this isn't necessary part of that, and we ask that you do send us those copies of artwork and also your traceability evidence. But again, if you've got other questions about that, I'd encourage you to go and have a look at those, the rules and the guidance online. Just touching on certification, just a bit of a reminder really that the certified members are the members of the program who've passed a third-party audit in the past 3 years. Now, when we transitioned to Sustainable Winegrowing Australia last year, part of that transition was also transitioning to an independent single standard. And the standard that we have adopted is the Australian Wine Industry Standard of Sustainable Practice. There are 2 of them, one for viticulture and one for wineries. Now, it's really important to know that these have been developed by the wine industry. So they were driven from the wine industry. They've evolved over time. But we've done that in collaboration with FreshCare, who actually own these standards. So the process for becoming certified is that it's a necessary part of that is that you do attend a one-off training. Now, this training can be provided by the AWRI, or there are independent providers out there who can do it for you. And the cost of training varies depending on where you are and the group sizes. We generally like to do it as a group because it keeps our costs down. But it's around about $250 per person to attend that training. Now, the purpose of the training is to make sure that you are absolutely crystal clear on what you need to do to actually pass an audit. This is, an independent standard, and the audit itself is against all of the elements in the standard. So what we do is take you through that standard in a lot of detail. There's a lot of forms and templates available through that training process that you can use to demonstrate when you go to audit, but that's the purpose of training. Once you've been through the training, you basically go back to your business, prepare for the audit, whether it's changing some of your processes or practices on farm or in the winery. And then if you do have any paperwork that you don't already have, get that ready. And then it's up to you to voluntarily undergo a triennial audit. Now, that process is that you contact one of the certification bodies, and there's lots of information about this online. So I'd encourage you to go and have a look at that. And the cost of that audit once every 3 years, again, ranges from about $800 up to the most I've heard of is $2,000. So I'd encourage you, if you're about to arrange that, is to contact a number of different certification bodies and get quotes for that audit. So the next thing I wanted to highlight on the website is that if you are not certified and you're interested in becoming certified and attending one of those training sessions, there's a button there, the yellow one. If you click on that button, it will take you to an online form where you can give an expression of interest for training. Something else I wanted to show you on the website was this link. It says Sustainable Winegrowing Australia Snapshot. That will take you to a new document. It's a one-pager. I've only captured half of the page there. But I think the most important thing I wanted to just highlight was that this one-pager was really put together. It was a collaborative initiative by us here at the AWI, but also Australian Grape and Wine and the marketing team at Wine Australia. And what we've tried to do here is really capture the essence of the program, what it's about and why you might want to join the program, and also it highlights the benefits of being part of the program. So if you're listening to this and you wanted to talk to others in your business about the program, this might be the document that you go online, grab it, or send the link on to others in your business to start that discussion about being part of the program. So something else that's new on our website, if you scroll down from what you can see here, down the bottom, there's a number of new case studies. So there's 3 of these are brand new ones. And what we've tried to do here is show how growers and wineries have implemented changes within their businesses to decrease their environmental impact and also increase their sustainability. There's some really good examples of how growers and wineries have used their benchmarking data through sustainable wine growing and how they've also saved money. So we've tried to make that link really strong in those case studies. So earlier I mentioned a couple of the people who've participated in these case studies. This is where you find them. And I'd encourage anyone out there, if you are a certified member and you've got a good story to tell us, and especially if you've been able to, go through that process of looking at your benchmarking reports, identifying areas where you can improve and making improvements, I'd love to hear from you and do another case study on you. So one of the other elements of the website, it's been there for a long time, but I thought it's useful to remind people that there's this ability to search who the other members are. So if you click on that blue button there, it will take you through to this web page, and essentially you can either search by the name of a winery or a vineyard, the state or a zone, region, whatever you like really. Just fill in one of those fields there and do a search, and it will take you to a list of members. I've just done a quick search here, and what I really wanted to show you here is that, so they're listed by the name of the site here, whether they're a winery or a vineyard, where they're located, which state, and the region and zone, and whether or not they're a certified member or a member. And this column here is the year they joined the program. The other thing I just wanted to highlight is that the certified members are actually in purple, and when you're online, if you click on that, that's a live link that will take you to their website. And hopefully some of those members take us directly to their sustainability page on their websites. The last couple of things I just wanted to show you where they are. I've referred a couple of times to the program guide and also the user manual. If you want to access those, it's those two buttons there. I can't emphasize this enough. A lot of the frequently asked questions we get, the answers are in the program guide and the user manual. So if you're brand new to the program, this is definitely the place to start. Have a good read of those two documents before you try and start the process online. Now, I guess this is really a call out to the existing members. We're in the middle of the membership renewal process right now. We do track how our renewals go each year. And what I'm just showing you here on the slide, where the arrow is here, the little yellow squiggly line is our current membership year. So this was a snapshot from yesterday. We're tracking ahead of where we were definitely last year and about on track with the year before that, but we still have a long way to go to get all of our members renewed. The cutoff date is the end of August, so the 31st, that red line there. We would really, really like you all to get your memberships renewed before the 31st of August, because this enables us plenty of time to go through the data, do any checks for accuracy, and make any changes if we need to before we release those benchmarking reports. So the earlier you guys put the data in, the earlier we can go out with the benchmarking reports and any of the other articles and things that we put out in the public domain. Now, if you're not a member and you'd like to join the program, it's pretty simple as well. Go back to this website, and that blue button there on the left with the red circle around it, this is where you go to join or to log in. So click on that one, it will take you to the membership page. If you're an existing member, you click over here on the login button, but if you're a brand new member, click on the register button. Now, if you're a member who for some reason let their membership lapse, that's no problem either. You don't need to remember any passwords. If you are in the system and your email address is the same, you can go to this login button for existing members and use your email address to get a secure link to go back into the program. Okay, so you don't need a password for that. If you're a member who was suspended though, and if you've changed any of your contact details, you can just give us a call and update those, and that will enable you to log in. And just a reminder about the fees and how the program's set up. So certified members and members pay the same membership fees each year, and it's the same for vineyards and wineries. So that fee is $110 a year. The only additional fees are for the certified members. There's that one-off training cost that I mentioned before, and then there's the audit cost, and that is variable, but that cost there is payable once every 3 years. So I thought I might just touch on a couple of FAQs in case I hadn't mentioned them by the time I got here. But just a reminder, the renewal period is between the 1st of July and the 31st of August every year. So that's the period when all the members are going in and putting their data in. Now, that's not to say that if you miss that, if you're a new member, you can join at any time of the year. The data that you're reporting is for a financial year, and for the current membership renewal period, you're reporting for the 2019-20 financial year, so it's retrospective. I'm often asked how long it takes to complete. Now, members who are already in the system who've done this plenty of times, the best of them, I think, can do it at about 30 minutes. If you can do it quicker, I'd love to hear from you as well. But those who are new to the program and who are unfamiliar with the system, I have heard it can take up to 3 hours for the first time. But I can assure you that the first time is always going to be the most difficult and it will take the longest. But please be persistent with it. It'll be worthwhile. And then the next time it'll be much, much easier. I said this before, but if you have been part of the program in the past and you want to come back, there's a very good chance we've got all your information still in the system. So if your email address is the same, go ahead and use that email address to log in. If you have any problems, you can contact the help desk though. And again, no, you do not need to remember a password. You can sign in with your email address and receive a secure login link. And as I said before, there's a lot of the frequently asked questions. We've tried to capture them in the program guide and in the manual, just to make sure that it's all there in the one place. I really, really encourage you to go and have a read of those two documents if you're new to the program. Now, the contact details are always the same for us. It's the helpdesk@awri.com.au. We encourage you to email. We are getting a high volume of calls right now through the phone number. So if you don't get us on the phone, please just be patient with us. And the best advice is to send your queries through to the help desk email. And that website again is there. So if there's resources that you're looking for or any of those guidance materials, go and have a look on the website. I do have a few acknowledgements here. I think the number one acknowledgement, I just wanted to thank all of the members, especially those ones who have reached out to me personally and given me feedback on the program or talked through different elements of the program. I really appreciate your input, and also those ones especially who have contributed and taken a lot of time to help me put those case studies together. I especially wanted to shout out and thank Anna Hooper from Australian Grape and Wine. Anna Hooper has been an invaluable resource to me in the last 12 months especially in development and launching the Trust Mark, and also the others at Australian Grape and Wine, Tony Battling, the CEO, Lee McLean, and also Ali, who's been doing some communications and marketing for us. At Wine Australia, the team's Alex Sass. Alex, Anna and I meet monthly to talk about the program. So Alex has also had a lot of input into the program. Andrea Hall and Stu Barclay from the marketing team at Wine Australia are also now really engaged with us. We meet with them once every 2 months to talk about the marketing opportunities for Sustainable Winegrowing Australia. So thanks to the team at Wine Australia. The Sustainability Advisory Committee, so this is the industry advisory group that supports the program. And that committee is hosted by Australian Grape and Wine. And if you want information about that, you go to the Australian Grape and Wine website. And also to the regions, the regions, and I'd hate to start mentioning them because there are a lot of them and I wouldn't want to miss anybody out, but I'm really, really so happy that we've been supported with the regions putting our information into your newsletters, picking it up on social media. The invitations I've had to present at different workshops and presentations in the last 12 months has been pretty overwhelming. And also, we've been in the process of writing a number of different grant applications, and those regions who've put the time to write us letters of support for those grants and all of that other support that you give us in the regions, without you, really this program would be nothing. So thank you very, very much for that support. And the last two people I wanted to thank were Megan Coles and also Anne Lord here at the AWRI, who've been supporting a lot behind the scenes, but they've been giving a lot of time and a lot of effort on the program. So thanks to Megan and Anne. So that brings me to the end. There's some contact details and others, but I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks very much, Mardi. A really substantial update around the program there. As Marty's indicated, we're going to move from here into a Q&A. So if you do have some questions regarding the program or anything that Marty's discussed here today, then this is your opportunity. Please send them through. Just a reminder, if you do want to ask a question, just open up that Q&A button in your Zoom toolbar, type it in and send it through. Marty, we might start with a fairly simple one. I've got a question here about whether if someone has a vineyard and a winery, is there a requirement to have to memberships?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. The answer is yes. Because we're collecting the data separately for vineyards and wineries, it is necessary to have two separate memberships. Because that, when we're talking about yield and area and water use, electricity use and other things, it is important that we capture that separately. So the answer is yes.
Yep, great. I've also got a question here about, I guess, some of the costs associated with auditing and what sort of value comes out of that process.
Okay, I think, I talked a little bit about what others in the program see as the value of that certification process. And I think I just reiterate those same things again. It's up to the individual really to decide whether or not certification will be valuable for them or not. Some people see as highly valuable, and they've been certified, since 2009 when the program first launched. And others are now just seeing the value of certification and starting to pursue that. We've certainly had a lot more inquiries for certification training in the last couple of months. So I'd say it's really an individual decision for a business. Probably the most immediate benefit you will get is that you will have somebody independent come into your business, have a look at the processes and practices you've got in place, and just give you some independent advice on how you're going. I didn't mention it before, but really auditing shouldn't be seen as, like a policeman coming onto the property and telling you what you're doing wrong. It's really not like that at all. The auditors are trained in this. They've all got backgrounds in the wine industry, so they understand vineyards and wineries, and they're really there to help you through this process. The people that I talk to that have been through this process mostly say that the auditors are mostly very, very helpful.
Okay, thanks, Marty. Are you also able to speak about what sort of targets you have with regard to membership uptake over, say, a long period or the extended period, and what you're doing to improve that uptake?
Yep. I guess we don't have a set target. I think there's another question here that I might start with is, other countries have different approaches to managing a similar program to this one. Some countries have made it a mandatory requirement that every grape and wine producer is part of that program. And I think there's actually much more value in this program being completely voluntary. Voluntary programs indicate that the people who are members find some value in the program. So in terms of uptake, we think the uptake is good. It's been relatively stable for the past few years. So we think those people who are in the system find it's valuable. However, what we would like to do is, now that we have, really solidified the position of Sustainable Winegrowing Australia, is while we're doing, communications like this, is to let people know there's a lot more value in the program than there may have been 10 years ago. So if you saw it back then and see it now, it looks very, very different. So there's a lot more there. And yeah, we'd encourage you to have a closer look. In terms of the strategies that we're taking to promote the program, it's things like this. Really, we do a lot of comms through the AWR extension platforms. There's a lot of so that's face-to-face workshops and meetings when we are doing those, the webinar program, and I'm doing lots of meetings with different regions at the moment, talking at the regional level with them on how they might be able to support their members to adopt the program. I'm also in regular contact with the large wine companies to understand how this is important to them and making sure that we're aligned in everything that we do. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks, Marty. Also got a question here about training. I presume it's in relation to the one-off training, and whether that can be delivered virtually.
That's a really good question. Up to now, it hasn't been delivered virtually, but I think, under the current situation with COVID, there's a lot of different training programs out there that, are having to transition to an online or virtual platform. We're in active discussions with the guys at FreshCare about how we might deliver this virtually, because I think there's growing demand and I think it's something we absolutely have to do. So I'll keep you updated on that. I should have more information in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay, thanks, Marty. How is sustainability certification different from organic certification?
Okay, my understanding is that there's different organic certification programs out there. My understanding is that there is quite a bit of overlap in some and no overlap at all in others. So you'd probably be best if you already have organic certification to have a look at this program and see where you can find those overlaps if you're considering doing both. But really, organic certification is more about making sure that you've adopted organic principles, whereas sustainability certification is a much more holistic approach to management, and the elements are far broader than in an organic certification program.
Okay, thanks, Marty. A question here about whether if someone is accredited with Fresh Care, does this automatically mean they are a member of the program?
No, the answer is no. If you happen to be a member of Fresh Care, and I'm guessing that's historically you've been through some training in the past, that's great, and you probably, or you may already have your certification, but that doesn't automatically get you membership to Sustainable Winegrowing Australia. So the two things work together. You become a member of Sustainable Winegrowing Australia, and if you want to be a certified member, then you'll have your audit certificate that comes from Fresh Care, and you upload that to become a certified member of Sustainable Winegrowing.
Okay. Comment here about presumably you can fail certification, and what are the benchmarks and where would they be accessible?
Okay. Failing an audit. I don't know of anyone who's ever failed an audit, but that's not to say it doesn't happen. The reasons you would fail an audit, though, is that if you can't demonstrate that you're aligned or complying with the standard. Now, the standard itself is based on best practice, and it's based on the process of mitigating risks. You can find those standards. They are online. If you go to our program guide, it's on page 6. There's 2 links there to the 2 different standards. So I'd encourage, if you want to know what you need to do or what level you need to be at, it's all laid out really clearly in the standards.
Okay. Also got a question about the auditors specifically and where you can get some more information about obtaining quotes.
Yep. So again, in the program guide, might be on about page 6, 7. There's information about the certification bodies. So the certification bodies are the ones who have the auditors, and the range of different certification bodies that are available to do the audits. And there's also a link in the program guide that you can follow to get a quote for those audits.
Okay, thank you. How quickly have members been able to progress from a new member to certification? Is there a requirement to have fulfilled certain requirements over a period of time before?
The quickest I know of has been within a couple of weeks. These have been people who are pretty experienced and pretty sophisticated with their processes in their businesses. However, others might take a bit longer than that. It really depends. I'd encourage anyone who was not sure about how long it might take, have a look at those standards, have a look through what the requirements are, and work out, how close you are. You might be surprised how much of it you already do, and there's certainly no obligation, and we don't want you to duplicate anything you already have in place. If you've already got lots of systems in place, there's a good chance you're probably complying with most of what's required. It might just be that you need to organise things slightly different for when you have one of those audits.
Okay. A question here from someone who did the Entwine certification training years ago. Do they need to redo the training to be compliant with new standards?
Yep. The answer is no, especially if you did end up getting certified. It's up to you though. If you think you'd get some value from doing the training again, I'd encourage you to do it. But no, there's no requirement for you to redo it.
Okay. I've got a question here from a bottler/exporter, and they're interested in knowing whether they can get involved or should get involved in the program in any capacity.
Okay, that's a good question. At the moment, we don't include bottling and packaging is not really within the membership. That's not to say we don't want you to be involved. We certainly cover some of the packaging elements within the winery's membership, but no, maybe give me a call and we can have a bit of a chat about how you think you might be able to get involved.
Yep. Where can people find the new standards, and are they freely available?
Yes, so the program guide, page 6, there's 2 links.
Okay. A question here about someone who was an Entwine member and whether they can just roll over into the Sustainable Wine Growing Program? I presume the answer there is yes.
Yes, yeah, the answer is yes. If you were ever a former member of Entwine or Sustainable Australia Wine Growing, so that's the program that evolved from McLaren Vale, yes, your details are in the program already, especially those people from the SOAR program in McLaren Vale. If you signed a transfer of data form, then we already have your information in the system, and same goes with Entwine members. That database was rolled into this new database, and we also have your information.
Okay. Are there any discussions about entire regions becoming certified? And if so, what percentage of regions of the region would you require uptake from? Of that region would you require uptake from?
We have had this discussion at the Sustainability Advisory Committee level. However, it's really only a new discussion. It's something that was looked at in the past, probably maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and at that time it was not really seen to be a feasible thing to do. It's not to say that we won't still continue talking about it. I think we will. And the answer to how many, I don't know.
Yep. I've got a question here about when you might be able to visit WA to provide the one-off training and how many attendees you would need to register for that type of training.
Yeah, right now, I don't know when I might be able to travel to WA. However, I know that there is an independent training provider based in WA who you may be able to get in touch with and get him to do your training. But I'd still encourage you to fill out that expression of interest form on our website, and I can forward your information to that trainer.
Okay, someone here is just checking, is sustainability certification only available to those who have achieved best practice standard as per the workbook?
Yeah, that's a good question. The workbook is closely aligned to the standards, but it's not exactly aligned. I would say use the workbook as a guide, and if you're achieving best practice across everything, then there's a very good chance that you'd be ready to go to audit.
Okay. For those vineyards or wineries that are certified organic, can they also have their Sustainable Winegrowing Australia audit conducted at the same time as their organic audit?
It is possible. The audits still stay separate, but what you'd need to find is an auditor who can do both of those audits. Now, my understanding is that there is one certification body who, which can do that. I think it's ACO. So they do organic audits, and they can potentially do the Sustainable Winegrowing Australia audits, or the Australian Wine Industry Standard of Sustainable Practice audits.
Can auditors access the workbooks, or do they?
They only can if you give them access to the workbook. I'd not advise giving them a password or anything like that, but certainly if they were on your property, it is actually part of the audit that you are part of Sustainable Winegrowing Australia, and you do need to demonstrate that you've had continuous membership and that you've completed your data and workbook.
Okay. And how will use of trust mark on products be audited to ensure compliance with the 85% certified fruit supply?
It's actually covered off in the standards as well. So when an auditor comes out to your property to do that audit, if you've been using the trust mark, they want to do an audit of that as well. However, those who have not yet started using the new standard, who are transitioning from the old codes of practice, in that interim period of a couple of years, what we're asking you to do as part of that application to use the trust mark is to provide us with the traceability evidence. So you're actually sending it directly to us at the moment. And there's more information and explanation of that in the Trustmark Rules and Style Guide.
Do you have any information about how similar types of trust marks in different markets are perceived and what the uptake has been like in, say, the US or the China or the UK markets?
I don't have a lot of information about that. I can only offer anecdotes of what I've seen when I've been overseas, and certainly there are a range of sustainability trust marks appearing on wine bottles. My observations is that it varies across different wine price ranges, and look, I don't know. I'd be talking in generalisations and anecdotes. The answer is no. I have not seen anything published on it.
Sure. Does the program consider carbon footprint, carbon offsets, etc.?
Not exactly. What it does do, it will give you a total of your greenhouse gas emissions from the property, so either that the vineyard or the winery, and it will give you an indication of where the sources of the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's broken down into fuel, electricity, and nitrogen, but it does not recognise carbon offsets.
Mm-hmm. Question about whether you publish the data for others to benchmark against. I think you went over this, and the answer is yes. Is that?
We don't publish all the data. No, we do publish some data, but it's not broadly published at the moment.
Okay. I think we may have gone through all the questions we've had come through, Mardi. Was there anything final that you wanted to bring up or leave our audience with?
The only thing I'd say, and I think it's really reiterating what I've said, if you've got any doubts, if you saw what we were doing in sustainability or environmental management 10 years ago, and you haven't really looked at it since then, I really would encourage you to have another look, have a look at what we're doing. And if you've got any questions about it, please get in touch with us and ask us the questions. Or if you know that your region's having this discussion, get involved in those regional discussions and find out what others in your region are doing. And a good way of doing that is having a look at that member register, have a look at your own region and see who else is in the program, and go and approach them and see what they find and how, what they think about the program.
Yep, great. Thanks, Marty. We've also had a couple of questions about contact details. They should still be visible on your screen there. So the contact help desk at awri.com.au and the phone number below would be your best point of contact for anything that needs follow-up. So Marty, I think we might leave it there. Can you skip through to the final slide for me? While Marty's doing that, I'd just like to extend a big thank you to Marty for coming in and providing some really important updates around the program and highlighting some of the key aspects that you should be aware of. Thank you also to everyone that joined in today's session and participated. You will receive a link to the recording of the session, so be on the lookout for that. Acknowledgements also to Wine Australia for providing funding and support for webinars by the AWRI Extension Project. In the next AWRI webinar, Dr. Simon Nordesgaard takes a look at autonomous robots and electric tractors. This session is scheduled for Thursday, the 20th of August, so in a fortnight's time. If you haven't registered for this already and you are interested in attending, then please visit the AWRI website. Thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you at the next AWRI webinar.